Hello, welcome to this video, and on this video I'm going to be ranking the 10 greatest biscuits of all time. This will be a highly objective list. This is the 10 greatest biscuits that cannot be questioned by anybody else in the world, as I have done all the research and I have actually come up with the list of the 10 greatest biscuits on this video. That's what you're watching now, is a list of the 10 greatest biscuits of all time, ranked from 10 up to 1. So number 10 will be like the 10th greatest biscuit, and number 1 will actually be the greatest biscuit, of which you will all agree, because it is an objective list, like I said. I've done a lot of research into this subject, which has mainly been me eating biscuits. I have eaten all the biscuits on this list. Any of the biscuits that are on this list I probably haven't eaten, so that's why they're not on this list. Anyway, I am yabbering away when I'm sure you all want to get deep into the actual list itself, which I have over to here to my right. So what have we got at number 10? Well, before I start, there are some criteria to this. So the criteria is, the objective criteria is that I have eaten them all at least once. And in many cases, I've eaten a lot more than one. That I like them. So basically, that's the main criteria, is how much I like them. Also, there is a rule. So there is an issue with chocolate-covered biscuits, because as soon as you cover any biscuit in chocolate, it's obviously going to raise right up the list quite high. And so if I've included the chocolate-covered version of the said biscuit, I will not include the unchocolate-covered version of that biscuit. Now, this actually takes out some really classic biscuits from the list. So you almost need to consider the biscuits that are uncovered by chocolate, that haven't made the list, that they are sort of honorary members of this list. They are related sort of sideways to the list. At some point I will, publish the full list with, sort of little, diagrams going off the main chocolate covered biscuits pointing to the unchocolate covered biscuits, and suggesting, using decimal point system, whereabout on the list they should go. Anyway, now I am ready to start. So what have I got at number 10? Oh yes, another thing before we start. You're probably doubting whether I've actually got this list down, because I do seem to be treading water somewhat. Another thing is, I am English, British. I'm from the United Kingdom. This is very United Kingdom centred. I'm sure there are biscuits in other countries that are wonderful, in much the same way as the USA has its progressive rock bands. They're all wonderful little progressive rock bands. Obviously, all the greatest progressive rock bands come from the United Kingdom, and I'm pretty sure, without doing any research into this whatsoever, and I'm having no grounding in fact, that it's the same for biscuits. So I've assumed that the greatest biscuits in the world will be British biscuits, and so that goes without saying. And also I've assumed that I forgot the next point, you see. Where were we? Oh, you know I'm stalling here, don't you? I'm stalling here a little bit, Have I actually done a list of the biscuits? It is right here on my right. But anyway, the point is, these are all British biscuits, and I'm assuming that all the greatest biscuits are British. I'm also assuming that the British invented the biscuit at some point, or was very involved in the development of the biscuit, so we have an extra reason to be able to champion, much like progressive rock. Anyway, that's where I stand on this, and it's the truth, and it's all correct, and it can't be argued with. So let's carry on, shall we? So number 10. At number 10, I have the Nice biscuit, which is a sort of rectangular, I think, coconutty biscuit. There's a different levels of biscuit. There are very opulent biscuits, and there's very straightforward biscuits. I've tried to argue for straightforward biscuits, working biscuits that do the job. The Nice biscuit isn't one of the main working biscuits. I think we're going to move to those later on. But the Nice biscuit is a good, strong working biscuit. It'll do the job. You're having a cup of tea, some people come round, you pull out some biscuits, they're Nice biscuits. And no one's going to go, oh my God, what are these weird biscuits? What do they do? How do I operate them? Am I allowed to dunk them? It's obvious that you can dunk them. They're the dunkable rectangular shape, which is perfect for dunking. We'll get to that in a minute. But they aren't the main ones. So this is what at number 10. But the thing that's really dropped them down the list for me is the fact that the manufacturers, and now these have become generic biscuits, all sorts of different manufacturers are making nice biscuits. But at some point it was decided to put the word nice on the biscuit, right? I don't need a description of what the biscuit is like for me personally. I don't need that description on the biscuit. And when I see that, I distrust it. My instincts are distrust it. You're saying this biscuit, you're telling me it's nice. If it's nice, I don't need to be told it's nice. Right, I can use my own judgment to decide whether it's nice. Don't tell me what the biscuit is like. You know, I don't need someone to write, this is yummy on a biscuit. I know the biscuits are yummy and nice, and this biscuit is a nice biscuit. I'm not arguing with the claim. The claim is probably correct, but I don't think it's needed now. There's some out there will say, yeah, it's not alluding to the word that is nice. It's alluding to the French town of Nice, where they have the famous jazz festival. That could well be the case, but again, as we get into the list, we have seen that the British have already adopted the idea of French sophistication with their biscuits. That again, it's really copying another much more famous biscuit in that regard. Anyway, that's what's knocked it down the list. I'm pretty sure you will all agree that that's the reason why it's languishing at number 10. So some of you fans of the nice biscuit, of which there won't be that many, you know, those of you who have complaints, you can see it's just the nomenclature on there which I don't like. I am taking, you know, the sort of graphic, the graphic qualities of the biscuit into account. You know, it's what's really knocked down the number 2 and put it in the position. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Shall I move on now? Right. So at number 9, I have the rich tea biscuit. Now, this is your working biscuit. A rich tea biscuit is your working biscuit. And I think it usurps the nice biscuit in that regard. The thing with rich tea biscuits is they are pretty horrible. And if someone brings out a tin of biscuits, for example, and they've got all sorts of different biscuits in there, they will have some rich tea biscuits in there. And most people, I believe, will take a smattering selection of the biscuits and they will include the rich tea biscuit in there to show that they are not opulent and self-indulgent and self-obsessed. This is a really important aspect of this biscuit. It's like the aesthetic biscuit. It's like the sort of biscuit that a monk would have, right? I always imagined when I was a child, I'd read books about, you know, sailors in the 17th century, and they would eat sea biscuits, and these biscuits could only be eaten if you dip them in salt water. You know, those type of really hard biscuits. I've always felt that the rich tea sort of points to that part of British history, which I like very much. Again, I have a nomenclature problem with this biscuit. I really do. Why does it have the word rich on it? In no way is this biscuit rich in any way. It's the complete opposite. And I feel like I'm being conned here with the word rich. And the word tea, that's suggesting that this biscuit's not that great. And like the sea biscuit, it will have to be dunked, unlike other biscuits that can be eaten on their own. The rich tea will have to be dunked in the tea. And it's telling me that that's the thing I need to do. And I don't want to be told by my biscuit, by my biscuit. I don't want to be told by the biscuit. Not that the biscuit itself is telling me, but whoever designed the biscuit and came up with that biscuit concept. I don't want to be told by the writing on the biscuit of what I should do with it, or be given some quality idea that it's rich. You know, there's one thing calling a biscuit nice. A biscuit can be nice, but can it be rich? Especially a rich tea biscuit, which is not an opulent biscuit at all, which is in its favour for me. But of course, once you put the word rich on it, it just knocks it right down. So that's why we got a rich tea at number 9. Right, at number 8, I have an incredible biscuit at number 8. At number 8, I've put the fig roll. Now, the fig roll is an incredible biscuit because they've come in at number 8, and I'm quite partial to a fig roll, despite the fact that they're absolutely horrible. But I will eat them because of what they represent in the sort of biscuit hierarchy. And what we have here is a biscuit that is harking back, I think, to a bygone era. It's almost like a medieval biscuit. I wouldn't be surprised if this was the biscuit of choice of Henry VIII. It probably is. I haven't done the research, but if you research into it, you'll probably find that Henry VIII's favourite biscuit was the fig roll. And the fact that it's managed to survive all this time, through all history, I don't know how long it's been around, but I assume it's been around for probably 1,000 years, then the thing that's great about the fig roll is it is basically a dog biscuit, but it's been able to survive through history because of its sort of historical weight that it's got. It's an unrefined biscuit. It looks like it's been made by peasants somewhere out of their own human excrement. It's that type of a biscuit, which I think gives it gravitas on the list. I am quite partial to them. I can't get through many of them because they're so doughy and chewy and lacking in any taste. But that's what I've got at number 8 is the fig roll, right? So from this point on, we are dealing now with, this is what Pete Pardo always says on Sea of Tranquility. I'm going to say it now. From this point on, any of these could be number 1 for me. Any of these, right? So what have I got at number 7? At number 7, I have the chocolate malted milk, right? Which obviously gives an honorary place to the malted milk biscuit. The thing that I really like about the malted milk biscuit, right? In terms of chocolate covered biscuits, it does rate low on the list. If you had a biscuit tin with a selection in there, and you were sort of rooting through them, again, obviously, if you're not a narcissist, then you will have to take a selection. And if there's chocolate biscuits in there, you're not going to just take all the chocolate biscuits. You're going to take a couple of chocolate covered malted milks just to prove that you are not a psychopath. And it's not as nice. Let us be fair about that. But in terms of graphic design, right, this is almost like a Renaissance painting in terms of biscuits. It has its own frame and it depicts a sort of arable scene, maybe in historic England. We can see a cow, a gate. We can tell this is at a time where, human beings have enclosed, these creatures, because we can see the gate and it's chomping on the grass. As it eats the grass, we're aware that grass will be, turned into milk, and that in some way this biscuit is a product of that process. In some ways, and this is a quite common thing with biscuits, is to try and remind us of our digestive process. But I think in this case, it's done with such finesse that this really, in terms of just artistic, appreciation, I think this ranks very highly. Although the custard cream is vying there on this. Anyway, the other thing with this was when I was a kid, if you ever had a malted milk biscuit, the challenge was to try and eat the biscuit and leaving just the cow in the middle of the biscuit. Now, of course, this is not possible. It doesn't matter how hard you try it. I'm sure with tools like a microsaw, perhaps very small chisels, it could be possible. Just with pure using teeth, it's not possible. I tried, as did many of my friends in the 1970s. We tried very hard to free that cow from its frame. But the fact that they've built in that game into the biscuit. Few other biscuits have tried to do this, and we'll get onto that in a minute. But in terms of the success of building that impossible game into the biscuit design, this is pure genius. So that's why I have at number 7 the chocolate malted milk. At number 6, I have a personal favourite of mine, which is, of course, the Maryland cookie, right? Now, I'm not keen on the word cookie, right? This is a top 10 of biscuits, so you might be saying, why is there the word cookie in this title? Well, my only answer to that is I believe that other people across in other countries, do call biscuits cookies, which is ridiculous really, because anything you cook is something that could be described as a cookie. Anyway, so I assumed that this was an American biscuit, and I nearly didn't put it on the list for that reason. But actually, researching into this, that the Maryland cookies actually made by a company called Burton's Biscuits that have been around for about 400 years, I believe. And so this biscuit has been around for a long time, and I think it's really like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. It's Britain's take on American culture, and I think that has always been a success, and it just shows that with all those American cookies on offer, that still the British can beat them at their own game with the Maryland cookie, which is of course the greatest of the chocolate chip cookies, right? And that can't be argued with. So that's what I've got at number 7. No, so number 6 is the Maryland cookie. Right, number 5 and number 4, we've come up to 2 classics. Right, we were talking about working biscuits early on. We're now coming up to some classic working biscuits. At number 5, we had the custard cream. Right, the custard cream is an incredible biscuit, because you're probably saying that there's much more opulent biscuits. Yes, there are. This is a really basic biscuit, but it's not without its treat, because it has the custard filling in there. So, and we look forward to that. In terms of graphic design, if you look at the actual graphic design, I'm sure it's up here on my graphics over there. It's almost close to being like a King Crimson album cover. That's an incredible piece of design. Very simple. It just says what it is: custard cream. Right? How much this biscuit is actually got to do with either of those things, custard or cream, I don't know. But that's the name of it. I'm happy with that. Again, this one has the built-in game, because anyone who eats this properly will try and detach the top biscuit sandwich from the rest of it. And this is possible. And if you're doing this, eating a packet of custard creams, you're probably going to be able to do that 2 out of 3 times. To try and do it throughout the whole biscuit selection is an incredible feat. I'm sure somebody has done it. I've never been able to achieve this. So the fact that there's that in there is great. The other thing is, of course, is this biscuit is very cheap. Say you've gone down the shops, you only have a few pennies to buy biscuits. You could plump for a packet of custard creams, which I think you can get like at least 700 for about 40p. That's an incredible thing. When we get onto some of the other biscuits on this list, they're priced out of the market, and there's some biscuits, Fox's biscuits, I just even haven't put on the list. To me, that's a pudding, it's not a biscuit, and we'll get into that at the end of the video. Right, so where are we? Number 4. This biscuit for me is related to the custard cream, but it's even higher, and that is the Bourbon, which is often called the chocolate Bourbon. I don't think that's the correct title. Again, this is named on the biscuit, and it simply says Bourbon. Bourbon is a rectangular chocolate biscuit. How much this has to do with chocolate, I don't know, but I feel there is a chocolate connection. For me, this is almost like the chocolate version of the custard cream, and so it just elevates it that little bit higher. As we said with the nice biscuit, or could it be the Nice biscuit, this biscuit is named after a French aristocratic house. And so I do like the idea that somebody has been able to try and intertwine sophistication into this biscuit. Of course, it's not a sophisticated biscuit, it's a working biscuit. We would expect to see in sort of, less privileged households that can't afford chocolate hobnobs or whatever. And for that role, I think it needs to be commended. It's a very important biscuit. And of course, again, I think you can get at least 600 or 700 for around about 25p at Iceland. So that's an incredible thing, that we can still do. I mean, if things get bad, we could all be living on Bourbon biscuits, couldn't we? Because I'm pretty sure that you get all the food groups from that biscuit. Let's move on to number 3. Now, this is my contentious choice. I've put it high up on the list. You know where I come from. as with my dissections of Prog, the question is something a biscuit or is it not a biscuit? There's plenty of biscuits that I've missed off the list that are pretty much are biscuits, but is this a biscuit? I'm going to say it is. I'm sure the anally retentive, sort of gatekeepers of biscuit nests will be up in arms about this, and I expect this in the comments. So, feel free to vent your frustration at me not only can put this on the list, but putting it so high. But at number 3, I have put the Jaffa cake. Now, is a Jaffa cake a biscuit? Well, it says it's not. So what can we do? Straight off, it's not the Jaffa biscuit, it's the Jaffa cake. It's a cake. Anybody expecting a cake, right? Because a cake is it up another level from a biscuit. Imagine going around to someone's house and say, do you fancy a cup of tea? Oh, yes, please. Do you have any biscuits? No, but I've got some cake. Oh, brilliant cake. You've just gone up a gear. Now imagine that scenario plays out again, would you like a cup of tea? Yes, please. Have you got any biscuits? No, but I've got some cake. Oh, yes, please. Yes, Jaffa cakes. What's the next response after that? Surely I've proved I'm correct here. You're going to say that's not a cake, that's a biscuit. And I'm quite happy with the Jaffa cake. But it is only on the level of a biscuit. We're not really getting into cake level here. So my argument, even though it seems to be made out of cake materials and it's called a cake, I'm going to class it as a biscuit. And then, if it is a biscuit, which I believe it is, what an incredible biscuit this is. So tasty, one of my favourites. The only trouble with the Jaffa cake is that, and it again is the shape. They've gone for a sort of flying saucer shape, and so when you go into the shop, the packet looks like it's got a lot in, but they don't seem to pack that many. And I always feel like I only get about 7 Jaffa cakes in a packet, and so I often will plump for bourbons if I'm a bit strapped for cash. But in terms of taste, absolutely incredible. So you're best off going for the double pack Jaffa cakes, where you would get the normal amount of biscuits that you would get with a normal biscuit selection. Anyway, I'm rattling on about the Jaffa cakes, but I believe it is a biscuit. We need to class it as a biscuit. We need to welcome it into the biscuit community, because without that it is pretty homeless, because I'm sure the cake community is not going to allow the Jaffa cake into its sort of identity group there. So it needs to have a home with the biscuits. I welcome it with open arms because they're a lovely biscuit in my opinion. So we're going to move on into the top 2 now. We're nearly there now. So what have I got at number 2? Right, nearly number 1. Right, at number 2 I have the chocolate hobnob, which of course brings the hobnob in. Hobnobs are chocolate hobnobs are incredible biscuits. Quite late to the party, quite a recent biscuit really. It's not been around as long as some of the biscuits on this list, but as soon as it sort of appeared on the scene, it just came in straight in. The hobnob straight up, past the digestive, past the rich tea, all the way up to the top. It became the nation's favourite very, very quickly, and then they thought of putting chocolate on it, which is a work of genius. Sometimes, like with the malted milk, you put the chocolate on. It's nice to have the chocolate there, but it doesn't quite work with the malted milk. But in terms of chocolate, it's absolutely incredible biscuit. The only thing that's marked it down for me is it's just new, and I don't rank things that are new as high as I rank things that are old, right? Because I am old and prejudiced, that's why. The other thing is that in terms of the design, there's nothing there at all. It looks like a compressed Weetabix with some chocolate just splatted on, and then some person who's not been trained at their job just slurping the chocolate around. There's no ripple effect. It's just a messy biscuit. But the thing is, I think, even though aesthetically it's not as pleasing as a malted milk or a custard cream, I think the roughness is attractive to the palate. But I think that it's basically the newness. I think give it 50 more years and I may well have this at the top of the list. But what do I have at the top of the list? Of course, number 1, we have the McVitie's Chocolate Digestive. The greatest of all the biscuits. And of course, this includes the digestive biscuits, which would be at number 2 for me if I was allowed to put it on the list. McVitie's chocolate digestives are so ubiquitous in the big biscuit world that they have become to be known as chocolate biscuits. Mom, can we have some chocolate biscuit? Yes. And you bring out chocolate malty milks. No, not these, Mom. Not these ones. We want chocolate biscuits. Oh, you mean McVitie's chocolate digestives? Yes, that's what a chocolate biscuit is. The greatest of the biscuits. The most ubiquitous biscuit, Mom. The biscuit that goes through all classes, all different races, all everywhere. It's the most encompassing biscuit. You could go to a lowly household. Would you like some biscuits with a cup of tea? They bring out a chocolate biscuit. Thank you very much. You know, don't have to spend a lot of money on chocolate biscuits. But say I was welcomed by the new king at Buckingham Palace, King Charles III. If he welcomed me to his palace, and he brought out a cup of tea, and with that was chocolate biscuits. That is what I would expect from my king, right? Not some opulent Viennese whirl, right? I would not want that. I don't want to see these opulent biscuits on the list. I do not want to see the ruling classes showing off their wealth. This is a way in which the privileged can show themselves to be humble. And this is so important. I'm getting very angry about this now. Very, very angry. We must preserve the British chocolate biscuit as the most ubiquitous, highest standing biscuit in the realm of biscuits. This is so important that we do this. It's being challenged by so many other biscuits at the moment. And there we have the chocolate hobnob, the rough-hewn chocolate hobnob, vying from below, trying to pull at it. I'm sure people go, oh no, I'd rather have a chocolate hobnob because they taste nicer. Who cares if it tastes nicer? We're talking about chocolate biscuits. If you get fed up with milk chocolate, you can go to dark chocolate. They haven't fussed it up by putting Oreos in there or anything like that. This is the biscuit, right? Number one, objective. This is the one. I'm very angry about this. And when you get angry, people like your videos on YouTube and it increases the views. So I'm just going to try and extend this anger a little bit more because I'm really angry about this. So that's what I have at number one, is the McVitie's chocolate digestive. Some honorary mentions that didn't quite make the list for me. Jammy Dodgers, a lovely biscuit, a little bit childish. I think anybody eating Jammy Dodgers over the age of 40 really needs to be thinking about where their life is at, and for that reason it didn't quite make the list. Chocolate fingers, a good biscuit. The biscuit part of the chocolate fingers is a bit dusty for me. There's not much chocolate on them. You do get a lot in a pack. I seem to go through them very quick. I need more. There's not enough. There's not enough substance to them. So you try and eat 3 or 4 at once, you know. But they're a good strong contender. Maybe at number 11. Shortbread. Yuck. Who wants shortbread? Great big lump of dusty Scottish nonsense. We don't want shortbread, right? And so, right, ginger nuts. Right, ginger nuts are very nice biscuits. The problem is I want to be able to drink a cup of tea with my biscuit. As soon as you've bitten into a ginger nut, it makes the cup of tea absolutely disgusting. Anybody who likes the taste of tea after having a ginger nut is really strange in my book, and that's the way it is. So ginger nuts low on the list. They really are a specialist biscuit. They need to be approached with a certain knowledge of what the expectations of that biscuit are. In some cases, some makes get so hard that they're really hard to bite into, and then what are you going to do? Dunk it in tea? I do not think so. And of course, Viennese whirl, right? Probably the most aesthetically pleasing. It's like some dandy. It's the dandy of the biscuits, the Viennese whirl. And then because of the design, there's no. In terms of the function of the biscuit, it hasn't been considered whatsoever. So as soon as you bite into it, it's just a mess of dust, and there's that creamy stuff. And I don't know. I don't like a Viennese whirl. They're great clunky biscuits. You get about 4 in a packet. So they're low on the list. But anyway, that has been my list of the 10 greatest biscuit. It is set in stone now. Now it's on the YouTube. So if anybody who is doing a study of this does need to know the objective 10 greatest biscuits in the world, then this list has been done. We will lock that down now. I'm sure you will all agree with me, and I know there's going to be people naming other biscuits. Well, I'm not interested, especially if you're talking foreign biscuits. We have talked British biscuits here, the greatest biscuits of all time. And so I have finished my video. Thanks for watching. You wanted this, you got it. Right? Disclaimer. This video contained humorous comments and are not a representation of my opinion. Thank you very much. Thanks for watching.